Hello there and welcome to Des Illustrates. Today we are gonna paint these cute little flower cards. They are artist trading cards that I make for one of my Patreon tiers. Speaking of Patreon, if you want to have one of these trading cards, they are still up for grabs on the Crested Dragon tier over on Patreon. If you become a member there before the 1st of April, you will receive one of these little cards on your doorstep in April. I already painted the two on the left, the blue hyacinth, I believe it's called in English. I was first searching on blue grapes and I got actual blue grapes, but if I translate the name that we use in Dutch literally over to English, I get blue grapes. And the other one they called a daffodil, we call it a narcissus. And I already painted that before I started filming. The flower that we are painting right now is a crocus. I believe it's called the same in English and in Dutch. The color of this flower was really perfect for a specific color I had in my palette called quinacridone. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Quinacridone. I'm really not sure, but I have 3 shades of it in my palette. A rose, like a kind of purple, pink one that it's on the cooler side, a purple red, and a purple blue. For this flower I chose the purple red one. I thought it was really perfect for the color the flower had, and I also really enjoy having these colors in my palette because they mix really nice browns and skin tones, but they also are hard to mix on their own from reds and blues, so they are a really nice addition. For the stem here I used a more brownish reddish tone that slowly transitioned in a more cream-like tone. In the picture I saw that the purplish tone from the flower slowly transitioned in this brownish color, and I wanted to keep that close. As you can see, I started up really lightly with the colors of the flower petals, and I built up the contrast of the petals slowly. The back petals were showing through a bit, and I wanted to have that illusion in the painting too. And also it looked like the top parts of the petals were darker than the bottom parts, like there was a streak of darker color in them. I used for the little stem in the middle, I used Azo Yellow Medium, I believe, or Azo Yellow Deep, it could be that too. And I had to be really careful in painting those in, but also in painting afterwards, because I adjusted the purple a bit more afterwards, and yellow and purple together make a bit of a brownish skin color tone, so I didn't want it to bleed into each other. For the green leaves on the bottom, I used Hooker's Green Light. I usually don't use this color on its own. I'm not really a big fan of it. It's a bit of an unnatural green in my opinion, but I thought for this specific leaves, the color I was seeing in the picture, it fitted quite well, so I used that color. And I also think together with the purplish red, it is a really nice contrast between the two. Also on the leaves I started light and I built up the color slowly. It was really hard to make this thin of a brush strokes with the brush I was using. I do believe I have one smaller brush than this, but I don't really like painting with that because the water control in that brush and also the pigment water ratio control is really hard to manage with that brush. I did end up making little mistakes where the green was a bit too close to the middle, but I fixed that later with some white ecoline or ecoline, and I also used some white ecoline for the inside petals of the flower. You can see me do that right here. It looked like there was white coming from inside of the heart of the flower, and then it was slowly transitioning in a darker purple, so I thought I would add some strokes there. The last thing that I will be doing here is adding more contrast, like I was talking about the middle of the petals and the petals that overlap at the back. I'm adding in more of the purple red tone for this purpose. The next little painting is a snowdrop. In the Netherlands we call this a sneeuwklokje. It is a really white flower, so I didn't have to add too much color. For the green spots on the flower and also the green in the stem, I used olive green. This is a color I added later on to my palette, just like the purple red and purple blue from the previous painting. And the olive green, I'm really happy with the fact that I added that to my palette. It's much more of a natural green, and I find myself using it way more often than the other greens that came with the little 12 color sets in the beginning. It was a starter mixing set, but I added, I believe, 12 extra colors to it, so I now have 24 sets for that. For the shading of the white petals, I used a mix of a blue and a neutral I already had mixed on my palette. It was a mix from a previous painting, so I'm not sure what colors I used for the mix. It was a bit of a grayish neutral, and I believe I used some blue and sepia, but I'm not sure anymore. I personally find white objects, or in this case a flower, but also if you paint white fur or white horse or a white snake, I find it quite tricky to paint them, because nothing is absolutely white, and white picks up a lot of colors out of the surroundings. But if you paint a white animal or a white snow clock or snowdrop, it's called, in this case, you don't have the surrounding that you have in the picture you took. So for example, if you have a white dog on a green grass standing and you just make a head portrait of the dog. If you crop the picture, you will see that there is some green shading on the bottom of the head and in the neck, but it doesn't make sense to use that in a portrait because there is no green in the portrait. So you have to adapt the colors of white objects quite often, and it's tricky to paint these white objects and animals. Then we already arrived at the fifth flower I was painting. This is the last of the trading cards. It's a hyacinth. And once again I referred to my quinacridone colors. I really hate that name. We're just gonna use the name purple blue because that's the second name this color has. So I used purple blue in this case. The other flower I used purple red. And I also used, I believe, phthalo blue on the flowers because the base of the flower on the outside was a bluish tone and the rest of the flower was this purplish tone. But because there was blue in the flower, it made more sense to use the purple blue instead of the purple red. Once again, I started out light with a light wash of the purple blue, and then I added in the shadow in the middle of the flower and also the stripes that were darker on the inside of the petals. And I added here the blue. If I see this blue now, I think it might be ultramarine deep and not the phthalo blue, but again, I'm not sure anymore. I personally think that this painting, or the nicest painting, might be my favorite of this bunch. I enjoyed painting all of them, and it's hard to choose a favorite, but somehow those two speak more to me than the other three. I specifically used 5 different flowers with 5 different color combinations and different tones of the colors because I wanted them to be separate paintings and at the same time be a selection with the spring flowers and the obvious theme of spring. For the stem of this flower I used the brownish mix that I used on the first flower too, on the little stem, and I layered over it with a really dark blue-gray stone to make an illusion of red shining through the blue, because that was what I was seeing in the pictures. Right now I'm signing them with a green Faber-Castell Pitt pen. I decided to use a green one because I thought black would stand out too much on these cards, because the colors of all the flowers are really soft and really subtle. I want to remind you once again that if you would like one of these cards, that you can get one if you join the Crested Dragon tier over on my Patreon. If you made it to the end of this video, I want to thank you very much for watching. I also want to thank Hans and Perosu for supporting me over on Patreon already, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!